Isn't trendy, it's eternal, positioning Israel doctrine as timeless and unshakable. I don't follow the crowd, I follow the covenant. Separates the movement from popular culture. The streets talk, I correct them. Asserts authority and credibility in debates. Israel doctrine, where facts cut deeper than feelings. Appeals to logic over emotion. If it's not scripture, it's just opinion. Keeps focus on the Bible as the foundation. I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be right. Bold, confident tone that builds respect. This isn't religion, this is restoration. Shifts the brand from dogma to revival of truth.
Peace, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Israel Doctrines Google Hangout. I'm your host, Carl Lambert, and today's topic is Trump administration takes aggressive steps limiting transgender care for minors.
In a major policy shift, the Trump administration has announced sweeping new actions aimed at severely restricting access to gender-affirming medical care for transgender minors across the United States. This marks one of the most aggressive federal moves yet on an issue that has been a flashpoint in national debates over healthcare, civil rights, and the role of government in personal medical decisions. What the administration proposed. The Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, led by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., unveiled regulatory proposals that would bar facilities offering gender-affirming care to minors from receiving federal Medicare or Medicaid funds. This could force many hospitals to stop providing treatments like puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and related medical services for transgender youth.
So it seems that the administration is protecting our youth.
Some proposals would also stop Medicaid and CHIP from covering gender-affirming treatments for minors, and potentially redefine gender dysphoria classifications used in healthcare and disability protections.
Trump do a lot of things, but if he's protecting the children, I ain't got any yet, but I choose to try to participate one day.
Critics say additional rules would target not just medical interventions but also gender-affirming products, like binders, by restricting how they can be marketed to young people.
So as you can see, our future, I would say, is looking better.
Administration's justification. Officials have framed these proposals as protective measures, arguing that gender-affirming care for minors is unsafe or inappropriate for children and that the federal government should not fund such treatments. Trump administration statements describe these procedures as harmful and not in the best interest of youth.
Not in the best interest for youth. What grown-ups are supposed to do, step in and protect the youth.
Strong criticism and legal challenges. Major medical organizations, including the American Medical Association and American Academy of Pediatrics, support gender-affirming care as medically appropriate when clinically indicated and tailored to individual needs. They argue healthcare decisions should be made between families and doctors, not politicians.
Family and doctors, not politicians. Family, y'all need to do better in raising your children. The politics of today shouldn't have to step in and protect your children. With that said, hit the notification bell. See y'all later. Peace. Peace, everyone. How y'all doing? Welcome to Foundational Israelite Black American YouTube channel hosted by Israel Doctrine, who claims to be a foundational Israelite Black American. Yes, we do listen to the news here. We do deal with it, not more than leading courts funding it, dollar skills. So we're gonna call him up and we're gonna talk about this Donald Trump declaring April the 2nd, Independence Day. So we're gonna have Dollar on the line soon. We're gonna have him speak on the matter. Dollar, peace.
Hello?
Peace, how you doing?
I'm good. How's it going down, brother?
It's good. Trying to speak on today's topic, Donald Trump declaring April the 2nd, 2025, Liberation Day.
Yeah, well, first, I want to just recap, because I think some things have changed. The last show we did, for the people listening, was Donald Trump's FBI Director Cash App Patel was confirmed, and the main topic was declassification. That show you guys can search in the Israel Doctrine channel. Donald Trump, FBI Director Cash App Patel confirmed. We spoke a lot about declassification, and the reason I'm starting this show, which is obviously April 2nd, Liberation Day for America. I'm going to get into why, but I'm bringing up the previous show because people might want to go back and kind of catch up, because some of the things that I'm going to be speaking about is covered in previous shows, mainly that some things changed since the last show. The last show, I instructed everybody that the declassification as it relates to MLK, JFK, and RFK would have been released 40 days from back then by Anna Paulina Luna, which is the congressional, she's a congresswoman for the 13th Congressional District of Florida. That changed. What has happened since the last show is the JFK files were released. They slowed down releasing everything, I think, because they didn't want too much information to overwhelm the people. So the MLK files and the RFK files are still coming, but the JFK files have been released. Now, to get into what's going on with April the 2nd, I thought it would be good to do a show about this because it kind of lines up. Everybody that watches the platform knows Brother Carl, Israel Doctrine, is dropping a documentary or a docu-series on what happened to that boy on April the 1st. And by coincidence, some big things are going to be happening here on April the 2nd. And this is based on a post that Donald Trump put up on his Truth Social website a couple days ago. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll get into what this is all about. So this is Trump's post, and he basically posted an announcement. It says, President Donald J. Trump announced today that the United States of America will be putting what is known as secondary tariffs on the country of Venezuela for numerous reasons, including the fact that Venezuela has purposefully and deceitfully sent the United States undercover tens of thousands of high-level and other criminals, many of whom are murderers and people of a very violent nature. Among the gangs they sent to the United States is Tren de Aragua, which has been given the designation of a foreign terrorist organization. We are in the process of returning them to Venezuela. It is a big task. In addition, Venezuela has been very hostile to the United States and the freedoms which we espouse. Therefore, any country that purchases oil, this is the key, and or gas from Venezuela will be forced to pay a tariff of 25% to the United States on any trade they do with our country. All documentation will be signed and registered, and the tariff will take place on April the 2nd, 2025, which is Liberation Day in America. Please let this notification serve to represent the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and all other law enforcement agencies within our country have been so notified. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So basically, he's calling April the 2nd the beginning of tariffs, which is something that people got to do a little bit of research on. But April the 2nd is the day that Trump's tariffs are going to turn on various countries. Now, to understand the way that the United States funds its government, it funds its government through taxation. So obviously, everybody who pays their taxes know that that tax money is how the U.S. funds the government, and that comes from internal revenue. So basically, all of the citizens of the United States that own businesses and work 9 to 5s, et cetera, they pay taxes. That tax money is used to fund the United States government through the IRS. What Trump is doing is he's doing tariffs. Now, what a tariff is where other countries that want to do business with the United States pay the tax externally as opposed to taxing the citizens. So there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation about Trump trying to only create tax cuts for the billionaires. No, Trump is trying to get rid of the income tax as a whole for all citizens of the United States, meaning you will no longer have to pay an income tax. That's not going to happen right away, but it begins on April the 2nd because to understand what I was explaining, the government is funded by the internal revenue or the taxpayers. On April 2nd, Trump is going to start putting tariffs on various nations that do business with us. He did it in his first administration on China, and he brought in about $200 billion in revenue by charging them a tax to sell their products here. Now, in this administration, he's doing it on various countries, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, countries who do business with Venezuela, China. So now the United States government is going to start liberating itself and bringing in money from outside or external revenue to fund a much smaller government. That's the reason why Trump is also, if everybody's been watching the news trends, firing people. He's shrinking the size of government. So the first thing that he's doing is he's making the overhead to fund the government a lot cheaper by getting rid of waste and fraud with Elon Musk in the Department of Government Efficiency. Right? So what he's doing first is making the overhead to fund the government cheaper. Then on April the 2nd, the tariffs kick in, which is going to start bringing revenue into the United States from external sources. That's going to fund the smaller government, and ultimately he wants to get rid of the IRS and get rid of the income tax and have the external money paid for funding the government. No longer will we have to work 9 to 5s and labor and pay an income tax on our labor. The people who want to do business with us will do that. So that gives you a background on why he's saying April 2nd begins Liberation Day, because the United States for a very long time has been being robbed by foreign interests. And I'm going to explain this and tie some of the D-class, because the other thing that happened, which why I referenced the previous show, Donald Trump, because we spoke about Crossfire Hurricane, which was a declassification of a scandal. This is probably going to be the biggest scandal in the history of the United States of America as it relates to what they did as a whole. But Trump, and I'm reading an article from March 25th, which was 3 days ago. Trump orders the FBI to declassify documents from Crossfire Hurricane Russia investigation. So we spoke about this, that D-class, or the declassification of documentation, starting with JFK, leading all the way up to the 2020 election, is going to bring the House down. This is not business as usual in politics as we know it. This is unprecedented. So basically, I'm going to just read a brief article from 3 days ago. It says, President Trump signed an executive order Tuesday directing the FBI to immediately declassify files concerning the Crossfire hurricane investigation, the agency probe launched in 2016 that sought information on whether Trump campaign members colluded with Russia during that presidential race. So, like I said, we spoke about this, which is that when Donald Trump won the election in 2016, Operation Crossfire Hurricane was initiated against him by the previous administration, which included Hillary Clinton, who was running for president at that time, Barack Obama, who was president, Susan Rice, the national security advisor. They basically had an investigation opened up on Donald Trump that basically allowed them to put a bug or tap the Trump Towers and the White House. All of the information of what they did has been declassified or ordered to be declassified and released to the American public. It's going to expose that the United States government was overthrown in 2020 by the Democrats and with the help of some Republicans. And it's going to show that back in 2016, they put an illegal wiretap in the White House and in the Trump Towers, alleging that he was colluding with Russia, which was all found to be false in the first impeachment of Donald Trump. They tried to impeach him for that. They put together a phony dossier that claimed that he was in a Russian hotel doing unsavory things with underage teenagers, and then they tied that to a telephone call he had with the leader of Ukraine that involved investigating Joe Biden and his son, Hunter, for selling U.S. trade secrets and things of that nature. So this has been an ongoing fight. But the reason why I'm bringing all of that up and tying it to the April 2nd Liberation Day is because this is the key. This goes back to JFK. And that involves what some people might have heard in the press, U.S. aid. U.S. aid is how all the foreign countries receive aid from the United States. It was set up by John F. Kennedy and his administration, and it has been being used as a slush fund to send money overseas and launder the money back into various politicians and political figures' pockets. So I'll give an example for people to kind of, back in the days in Living Color. And Living Color had a skit with Sally Struthers with the Ethiopian children. It was making a parody that the funds that are supposed to go to the children of Ethiopia wasn't going to Ethiopia, it was going to Sally. So that's what has actually been going on in real life. Ever since the 1960s, this fund that JFK set up, and mind you, they killed JFK. So they killed JFK and they took control of this fund, and they've been using it to funnel money for various charitable missions all over the world. But the problem is only a small percentage of the money for all of these different things is making it to the actual charity. Instead, the money is being funneled through different companies and sent back to political figures in the United States and lining their pockets with billions, if not trillions of dollars, which all comes from the taxpayers. So remember what I said in the beginning, the taxpayers fund the government. So all of the taxpayers that fund the government in the House and the Senators, they have the power of the purse over where that money goes. All of these situations and systems have been set up since the 1960s, in the very least. It's been going on before then, but they're starting with JFK. JFK into RFK into MLK is going to create a narrative and show what they did in the 2020 election, which is pivotal because one of the biggest things that I caught that came out in the actual releasing of the JFK files is something that I want everybody to research. It's going to line up what they did in 2020 here as it related to the COVID. And what I want y'all to look up is Operation Mongoose. This is some of the stuff that came out in the declassification of the murder of RFK and who was involved, whether or not there was one or two shooters and a whole bunch. It was 80,000 pages of documents that was released. So people are still sifting through this stuff and finding different new angles and things that wasn't already released in former classifications. Obviously, they did a JFK movie, so there were certain things that were known, but now everything has been released. Unredacted, by the way. They haven't put any black lines through any of the documentation that was released. This is a full unredacted release of the JFK files, over 80,000 documents. Now, back to my thing, I'll give you guys a little background. Operation Mongoose was designed to do what the Bay of Pigs invasion failed to do, remove the communist Castro regime from power in Cuba. So Operation Mongoose, when you research it, it involved them doing a bunch of things. But you know what? One thing that they did that lines up with 2020, they used biological warfare or bioweapons. So what's going to be what's about to happen is that it's going to show that the coronavirus that leaked out of that lab was a CIA operation to overthrow the president of the United States, the same way they did with John F. Kennedy. Same players or modern players that was doing what they did to overthrow the United States government back with JFK, did the same thing with Donald Trump, leading all the way to the 2 assassination attempts. They tried to actually assassinate him like they did JFK. But the key is in the JFK files, it shows that they used Operation Mongoose, which was a bunch of moves to overthrow government. Now, anybody that is from here in the United States knows that our country has been in the business, sadly, of overthrowing governments all over the world. So when you look at Libya with Fidel Castro, we have mastered the art of infiltrating countries and manipulating their people in politics and overthrowing governments. This has been going on since as far back as the 1960s. Before that, but just to keep everything relative, the JFK files sets the tone because it shows how the federal agencies and all of the government operated to overthrow the government here in the United States by assassinating JFK. And then seizing the funds that's in the U.S. aid, which Elon Musk, when he came in Trump's administration, he's been auditing every federal agency. The USAID was audited, people are being fired, government contracts are being ripped up, and we are moving towards a new world order. And it's supposed to begin or start on April 2nd. Because April 2nd begins the actual tariffs or countries having to pay the U.S. to do business with us, and as opposed to everything in reverse. They've been laundering our money, and foreign countries have been benefiting from the United States. Canada, some of our allies, NATO, all of them have been benefiting from all of our taxpayer dollars. If you were a U.S. citizen, you have a taxpayer or a straw man that pays taxes, and all of that money all throughout our lives has been being funneled to benefit foreign countries and even create things to kill us. Because when you look at the release of the COVID and then the bioweapon, I'm calling it a biological weapon. The vaccine was a biological weapon. I can say this personally because I have relatives that had side effects from that vaccine. One of them died of a massive heart attack. The other one had Bell's palsy. So if you're somebody that got that vaccine and you have Bell's palsy, which is basically a blood clot on your brain, or you have relatives that died of heart attacks suddenly, that's because of the biological weapon known as the actual vaccine. All of that stuff is in the D class that's coming out here. It's going to bring the house down. It's going to shock the world because it's going to show that the Democratic Party, along with some Republicans, conspired not only to overthrow Trump's presidency all from 2016 to 2020, but they released a biological weapon that affected just about everybody in the globe. Then followed it up with another biological weapon, which was the shot and it killed people all over the globe, and all so that they could steal the U.S. presidential election. And when I say that, how did they do that? Because the COVID allowed every state to change their laws and not have mail-in voting. So what everybody has to understand is called election day, right? Well, the election of 2020 was election weeks because something was going on that never happened in history, which is that election day, because of the COVID, allowed for people to do mail-in and not in person, and they were able to flood the system with mail-in ballots and overthrow Trump actually winning the 2020 election, as well as hack the computers. We spoke about that in the other show, but I'm bringing the people up to speed. The 2020 election was stolen. That's why Trump never said that he concedes that election, because he has all of, now that he's back in the White House, he definitely has all the power with the declassification to show the American people transparency of everything that's been going on. All the way back to 2016 with Crossfire Hurricane, how they bugged the White House and the Trump Towers and try to line him up with Russia, and then how they used the COVID to set up the election, and then how they used January 6th with federal confidential human sources from the CIA and the FBI to infiltrate those peaceful protests, turn them into riots, and try to hit him in reverse with the Insurrection Act, when it was them that had the power to protect the Capitol, the DC mayor, and the Speaker of the House. So Trump has all of the information and documentation to prove his case. He has all of the executive powers now that the people voted him back into office. He's trying to fix the economy by flipping the tables around on the rest of the world and say, hey, you guys are all benefiting from selling your products in the U.S. We're going to start taxing you so that we can take the tax burden off of our citizens through income tax, and then free the people, or liberate the people in the very least, because I have my own take on liberation and freedom. Is two different things, but liberation in the very least from the tyranny of what has been going on for as far back as the 1960s and before that. But 1960 was when they really did it, because when they killed JFK and they set up this U.S. aid, they've been funneling money through so-called charitable organizations that are supposed to have missions to help people all around the world, but it's benefiting people's pockets here. And while all of the general population has been suffering with the inflation caused by all of this.
Child USA.
All right, so this is not a game. This is real. Arrests are coming. They are going to be arresting people. And you see what's going on right now. I ain't going to say too much, because the documentary, I know it involves you having different interviews. I did an interview with you. You did some other interviews. It's a docu-series. The documentary to me is like an every year thing. Like, until they bring justice with the boy, the documentary really been going on for 8 years as a docu-series, because the documentary is just Brother Carl and all of the people who was involved lives being put before all of you people back and forth on the internet for 8 years. The documentary been done. So all the arguments about Carl said he was going, the documentary is just the day-to-day, because they haven't answered the question and they brought justice to that. So yeah, all right, on April the 1st, Brother Carl doing the docu-series, but until they bring the justice, look for a documentary every year, or really every day, because it's a rolling documentary. All these things are relative.
Or it can be stated it's a living documentary.
Yeah, the body politics is alive. So it's like a living trust, I'll call it, with the trust law. You can't, when I look at the state of hip hop, right, and I see that guys like Hassan Campbell are still on this internet, and then I look at what's going on with the informant culture and everything that's been going on. This every single day is a living documentary about the testament of what happened to that boy, because all of these people are caught 100%, and everything that's moving in the politics is aligning everything for us to come out right, no matter what they do, because they didn't bring the correction on that. I don't care what nobody tells me. When I'm seeing what's going on in hip hop right now with that Big U, WAP 100, Adam 22, the jig is up. Everybody, y'all are trying to slowly bring us into the fold that yes, these guys are informants and yes, they're working with the federal government, but it's all corruption. When you reach out past the internet like they did with strategic lawsuits against public participation and things of that nature, misuse the public trust and all of that, and then still not bring the justice, oh, this is an ongoing thing. It's going to keep going on maybe to the end of time until they do the correction. Because if they declassifying stuff from 1960 in 2025, you're talking about, let's say 50, 60 years it took for the federal government. There will maybe in the future be a day of declassification that's going to expose everything that they're doing now. But at the same time, I think it's being exposed now because when you understand what Trump is doing and what USAID is and what the JFK files are showing that the federal agencies has been doing, then it pretty much is a no-brainer what's been going on in the YouTube streets with all of these COINTELPRO dudes and what they've been doing on this internet. So the documentary is an ongoing thing, and I'm gonna say this much I know: the documentary doesn't even get into all of that yet. Other than the fact that we're talking about it right now, the documentary for what happened to that boy is an ongoing thing. In my mind, the final documentary is something so intricate because when you look at what's going on right now in our politics with Trump and what's been going on around the globe and how these different charities have been doing what they're doing, knowing what all of these charities are, non-governmental organizations, and how they were receiving grant money from a lot of those funds that Elon Musk is auditing right now, it's going to tie all this stuff together. And there's no way that anybody's getting out of it because of the fact that I believe on this side we got the truth. So we don't really even got to do much posturing or anything. We just got to just stay with the facts that dude came out on this internet, said he took a photo to kill a person that was allegedly being molested or statutory raped or whatever, which way. And the Associated Press was breached when they came out telling two different stories, and then all of that would be good because freedom of speech rights and you could lie and you have a right to choose death and all of that. But then when people started to get involved and try to solve that and they reached out past the internet and then did all of that, what they did, then that's it. They sealed their fate. They should have just left the YouTube banter because then they would have been able to use certain defenses that they're trying to use. That's not the case. The case is they reached out past the internet, put people's names in false court claims and activated the police state and lied to YouTube and did all of this stuff. And then dude is still sitting up on the internet poking his chest out, talking about he's not the informant, but Wax the informant. These dudes are all working, but at the end of the day, they about to get their whole situation dealt with because the Most High is working. It ain't what I'm saying, it's just the facts of what's happening in nature. Look at what's going on. Look at what we're talking about. April 2nd starts Liberation Day, and I ain't going to be too long-winded. I'm going to close out like this. My brother Cole on this platform told everybody that the Bible is the best tool for our liberation, and I seconded that. I said, you're right about that. Now, all of the people who deal with comedic science and maybe atheists or whatever, they better start looking back at that Bible again because everything that Trump is doing is biblical. He had them sign the Abraham Accords where he's trying to bring peace between the Abrahamic Brotherhood, i.e. Morocco, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel, where the deep state or the Democrats and the few Republicans, they want war. They want to try to keep everything in the land of Israel with Palestine and all of this argument. Trump just wants peace. He wants peace in Ukraine. He wants to end the endless wars. Because that's what they've been doing, getting us in wars that carry on for 20, 30 years, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of genocide and death in all of these foreign lands, all based on that U.S. aid and these political parties. And Trump is here to clean it all up, and he's got a military and a civilian alliance to do it because the people voted him into office. He's a duly elected president. So sad to say, all the Democrats that's licking their wounds and making all these fake narratives, you guys are the minority now. The people decided, even if a small majority voted for Trump, a majority of the people voted for Trump. They mandated him to clean up the government, to close the borders, to get all of this stuff in order. And if you're on the other side, you're just in an echo chamber talking to yourselves, because there's nothing you can do about this. The people have spoken. The people have spoken against the transgender agenda with the children. They spoke against the P. They don't want this stuff. It's just a small minority of people trying to enforce their will on everybody. And when they did that, they got the resistance, and here we are. And we told them, as it related to what happened to the boy movement, that playing around with that P inside of this LGBTQ was going to be the end of them, and we're not wrong. Because you can't play around with this stuff. And then you're trying to charge people and make up narratives about them, chase behind them, come up with false stories just so you can try to discredit them, because they know that they saw the little alien y'all was hiding. Y'all was trying to hide the alien. We saw it. So that's it, man. Like I said, April 2nd is supposed to begin. Now, let me say this too, because some people might try to jump out quick and be like, April 2nd does not mean the U.S. economy is not going to go through a little bit of turbulence before everything that Trump is doing kicks on. It just begins where the United States government will begin to receive intake or external revenue from countries that are doing business with us, that is going to, and I'll give like the end game on this, that's going to lead into a bill that's going to be signed on the House and Senate floor. And then Trump's true economy is going to activate. And they don't want to see that, because they want to keep us paying the taxes. The foreigners definitely don't want to see them have to pay to do business here. So this is a work in progress. We are currently at war with various countries. It's not, World War III hasn't fully been declared, but we're right on the precipice of World War III, because they do not want to see the liberation of the people of this country. And that lines right up with the liberation of the Israelites, because they want to keep everybody in bondage, and they want to keep everybody under the system the way it is been. People don't generally like change. I don't even like change too much, so I get it. But things have got to change on this internet, in this country, in our households. Things have got to change. The mindset of the people, all of this mess, all the Democrats and people who are Democrats, come away from your captive. Y'all look like y'all got Stockholm syndrome. They stole the election from y'all. They took Joe out. Joe was who y'all primaried and voted for. They gave you Kamala, and they lost. They lost. If you stick with that party that also released a biological weapon and had y'all all get an enforced vaccination and catch Bell's palsy, they knew exactly what they were doing to try to overthrow the United States government, and they technically did, because Trump led them in 2020. He let them overthrow the U.S. government so that the people could see that these people are wicked to the core. They don't care nothing about the country. They only want to see chaos and destruction. And this is what we're dealing with. We are at war. They're trying to, I'll say this last thing and then I'll close out. The show that we did prior, I said that this is all going to expose that people within the U.S. government were secretly selling uranium on the black market to have here hit with a nuclear weapon, or to use a nuclear weapon as a false flag to bring us into World War III. Because they want to overthrow this country's constitution and get rid of it once and for all. And no, they didn't care about death, because death is a casualty of war. So a lot of you same people out here still pushing and promoting and fighting for these frats and these parties, they'll kill y'all. They don't care about y'all. And my proof is in the pudding is that they forced the vaccine on many of y'all, and y'all all you all know how you felt when you got the vaccine. You know you felt it wasn't right. You know you watched your relatives have heart conditions and Bell's palsy and all of these different things. Wake up. There's still time for people to change. So all of the people who's adversarial to us, I'm going to say it like this. Y'all better get on the right side of history. We're not on the wrong side of history. If you're in opposition to us, in my humble opinion, you're on the wrong side of history. Find a way to extend the olive branch, because what's coming down the pipe is going to be what it is. And that's it, man.
after Bam got out of the hospital to figure out what really happened, and he gave me the picture of a light-skinned Puerto Rican little boy that looked just like me after Bam got out of the hospital to figure out what really happened, and he gave me the picture of a light-skinned Puerto Rican little boy that looked just like me as a kid. And he gave me that picture because I was going to be the one who killed that boy for Africa Bambaataa.
All right, y'all, that's the show. Hit the notification if you want to know more about upcoming shows. Peace. We're out.
Peace.
Throughout history, several historical groups and civilizations have been documented as having connections to ancient Israelite heritage while being of African descent. Here are some notable examples. The Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, a Jewish community that lived in Ethiopia for centuries. The Lemba people of southern Africa, who maintain traditions and practices similar to Jewish customs. Various communities in West Africa that have maintained traditions and practices that scholars have linked to ancient Israelite customs. It's important to note that this topic involves complex historical, genetic, and cultural evidence that continues to be studied by scholars and researchers.
About as it relates to the biggest military sting operation. It's Uranium One. Now, Uranium One is allegations against the previous Barack Obama administration, including Joe Biden, that uranium was being secretly sold on the black market in order to stage a coming war with North Korea, and then to have the U.S. lose the war. So back to our previous shows, what I was explaining was that when Donald Trump was elected president in 2016 and came into office, he was able to now get a security clearance to see all the declassified or classified documents that was in the government's possession. And because he was able to see the classified documents, he was able to see what the previous administration was actually doing as it relates to a lot of things. But Uranium One was where they were alleged to have been selling U.S. uranium on the black market so that down the line, which would be around the time that Joe Biden was leaving the White House, last year we would be pushed into a war with Russia and North Korea, and that uranium would be used in either a false flag event or in some way to kick the war off so that here could be attacked from an outside source and lose that war. So we have true infiltration in our country at the highest levels of government, and what we see now with Trump in his second term is unprecedented. He is dismantling the so-called deep state or the administrative state that has been in play as far back as 1913 under the Federal Reserve Act. So the central bank and how our money system flows with the U.S. Treasury, the Federal Reserve was established in 1913 as a Western central bank that basically charges us interest on the printing and circulation of our Federal Reserve notes.
Puerto Rico, correct?
Yes. Yes. So Uranium-1 is the big connection for why this is the biggest military sting operation in history, because it involves a plot to plunge us into a war. And now I'm going to kind of use some other wars to show you that as democracy has been spread around the world, what we can see in a pattern is that a lot of countries have been overthrown. Like one key country in particular is Libya with Muammar Gaddafi. Everybody knows who Gaddafi was. He was trying to put Libya on the gold standard. He wasn't able to achieve that. He was murdered and dragged through the streets of Libya, and Libya was overthrown. So all of these countries that the U.S. has been waging war in since Iraq, Afghanistan, they have installed democratic systems, but their playbook is to infiltrate the country, overthrow the government through a political uprising, and then bring the military attack in and change the course of history in those countries. That playbook that they've been running outside the U.S. is the exact playbook I'm speaking about that they were trying to run on the U.S. to overthrow our government here and install a democracy and get rid of the republic that the Constitution guarantees us. And I want everybody to do this research. If you look in the United States Constitution, the Constitution does not have the word democracy in it at all. What the U.S. Constitution affords all of us as U.S. citizens is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Democracy is something that came a little after the forming of this country, but it is not secured by the Constitution. The Constitution speaks about a republic. So what we're witnessing is an attempt to overthrow the republic once and for all, get rid of the Constitution by Democrats and Republicans alike, because this is not about going after all Democrats. Like I said in previous shows, if you voted Democrat at your local level or for former presidents, you're not technically a criminal because you voted Democrat. This is about the upper echelon of the party and what they've been doing to the Democratic voters, unbeknownst to a lot of people, which is trying to overthrow the entire United States Republic that is guaranteed by the Constitution. And they used Crossfire Razor, Crossfire Hurricane, and what I just explained about Uranium-1, which is selling U.S. uranium on the black market. And obviously, let me add this, now under the new Trump administration, they're investigating the flow of money in every agency in the federal government. The biggest news story is that they disfunded USAID. So USAID is a huge program that does a lot of work for soft power overseas with different charitable organizations and non-governmental organizations to provide assistance to various countries in Africa, the Middle East, and how those charitable organizations have been being used as fronts to launder money back into the pockets of various politicians. They use the charity overseas. As an example, they were giving out condoms to people in Mozambique and millions of dollars to sponsor this. And they say that it was to help the AIDS epidemic over there. But now what they're finding in their audits is that, let's say you got $1 billion flowing into that specific program, only a small portion is being used for the actual program, but the money is somehow being siphoned back into the United States and going into key Congress and senators' bank accounts. So they've been laundering U.S. taxpayer dollars using all of these different entities and government organizations and non-governmental organizations in a transactional scheme to money launder. So a lot of these things are being financed, obviously, because people incentivize these things through money, and it's being done through not only fraud and misrepresentation of the American people, but also theft, because they're sticking it back into their private bank accounts, right? So I don't want to get too deep on that, but that's just something I had to explain. Now, another thing, major thing, and this is going to line back up with this platform, is what actually happened on January 6th, meaning that January 6th, everybody know, was a protest to try to return the votes back to the states as it related to the 2020 election and whether or not there was fraud and various things going on with that election. And it didn't work out. There was the peaceful protest was kicked up into what they call a violent insurrection. I think I explained that they don't have the right to call anything an insurrection because the power vested in the executive branch and the president, the sitting president, is the only one that can truly call an insurrection. An insurrection is where some people come together to try to overthrow the sitting president. At the time of January 6th, Joe Biden's presidential election had not yet been confirmed or certified. So Trump was the one who was in power when the riots kicked off at the Capitol, stopping the actual certification. So nobody had the power to call an insurrection but President Trump. And that's what he actually did. A lot of people are going to find that out real soon now that Cash is in, because like I was saying, the FBI has already admitted that they have various confidential human sources on the Capitol grounds on January 6th. We spoke about this in a previous show, but I got to bring it up because it's going to bridge home. You guys can look at Ray Epps. Ray Epps is one of the key culprits that the Republican Party and a lot of people that were rallying there for Trump make the claims that he was one of the key confidential human sources that kicked off those riots. And it was recorded on camera the day before the actual January 6th protest. Ray Epps was moving around the crowds of people that were gathering at the Capitol, preparing for January 6th, telling them we got to storm the Capitol. And people called him out as a federal agent because they were like, we're only here to peaceful protest. So there's a video that most people could look up and find if you type Ray Epps of people pointing him out the day before January 6th, 2021, or January 5th, 2021. He was in the crowds of people that was gathering at the Capitol, going around telling people tomorrow we got to storm the U.S. Capitol. And people was telling him, you're a federal agent. Go ahead. You saying something?
No, you got it. My bad.
Yeah, so people were pointing out Ray Epps on January 5th as a federal agent trying to incite a riot, and that they weren't there to do that. They were there to peacefully protest, and that was it. Now, this all came out after January 6th, that Ray Epps is, in fact, a confidential human source for the FBI, and there were various other confidential human sources in the crowd. And on the very day of January 6th, there's also video of Ray Epps at the front of the Capitol telling people to storm the Capitol. Now, obviously, he was in the front, and people did storm the Capitol, but what they don't understand is that also involved the D.C. area police. The D.C. area police, who was managing the crowd at that time because Donald Trump offered to have the National Guard. He offered the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the actual mayor of D.C. People have to understand that who's in charge of the Capitol? The actual Speaker of the House and the mayor of Washington, D.C., their job is to protect the Capitol. Now, the president at that time, Donald Trump, he knew that there was a potentiality for civil unrest to be kicked off at the Capitol at his protest on January 6th. So he offered the Speaker of the House at that time, Nancy Pelosi, and the mayor of D.C., the National Guard to insulate any civil unrest that might kick off. And guess what they did? They denied it. They said they didn't want the National Guard on the ground. That's where Trump kind of exonerates himself from the allegations that he kicked off those riots with his speech that day, because he had already offered them to have the National Guard on the ground. They declined it. And instead, what we had was a bunch of confidential human sources from the FBI infiltrate a peaceful protest and turn it into a violent riot. So basically, Cass Patel now being confirmed, he's going to unravel all of that. They're going to unravel what really happened in the January 2020 election. And what I'm telling everybody, we spoke about this before, but it's relevant to Cass too. Fraud vitiates all. Donald Trump has all of the documentation and information from all the angles of how they stole the 2020 election. They're getting ready to release that on the American public. It's going to shock the world. Because when they drop all of this information, which involves who the confidential human sources, what role the FBI played in the actual insurrection to overthrow Trump's presidency, not the other way around. It wasn't Trump trying to overthrow Joe Biden's election. It was them overthrowing the fact that Trump actually won the 2020 election, and they were inside of a military sting operation, whether they knew it or not. And Cass Patel was a pivotal person in that role at that time, because Cass Patel let it be known that based on his tenor in intelligence, that the actual January 6th thing was planned at least a year before January 6th. So they already knew that they had to figure out a way how to get Trump out of power in 2020, and they planned for the events that took place at January 6th, way before January 6th. And Cass Patel, that's why they didn't want him to be. Let me say this too. Cass Patel, of all Trump's picks, they slow walked his confirmation, which went down yesterday, the longest of anybody else's nomination. So Trump had RFK Jr., he's now the health secretary. He had Pam Bondi, she's now the attorney general. He had Cass Patel as his pick for FBI director. They slow walked this thing. It took like 3 weeks to get Cass Patel's confirmation yesterday, because the week before, the Democrats made one of the moves that they could make, even though they don't have the majority, which was to push Cass Patel's confirmation back like a week. So by the time they did all of their posturing and things, it took about 2 to 3 weeks to get this confirmation yesterday, because they know that Cass Patel is like the end game. Cass Patel now has the power and the FBI power with the Attorney General power to go deconstruct everything they did, bring the declassification out, and prosecute these people. And when I say prosecute, some people are going to be prosecuted at the state level by specific attorney generals. Others are going to be prosecuted by the federal government. And the third, which is the worst, is going to be prosecuted internationally in military tribunals. This is not a game. This is not business as usual, as we know U.S. politics to kind of over the last 30, 40 years to be a certain kind of way. This is unprecedented. A lot of people is in a whole lot of trouble for what they've been doing. So let me recap. You want to look at Crossfire Razor. I explain what that is. You want to look at Crossfire Hurricane. I explain what that is. You want to look at the Uranium One deals. That's them selling the uranium on the black market. And then you also want to be looking out for the full declassification of what took place on January 20, the election of 2020 in November. Because I told you guys before, go on Rumble, look up Maria Zack. She spoke on the Senate floor, and she dropped how they caught intelligence overseas and foreigners hacking certain election systems in 2020 in certain states and flipping the votes that were going in the machines from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. So when the actual declassification of what happened in the 2020 election comes, fraud vitiates all. That means everything from 2021 post the inauguration of Joe Biden till 2024, where Trump won and came into the White House, was a crime. All the bills, all the laws, and that includes the COVID, because Joe Biden was the one that mandated mandatory vaccines for everybody. And then the other thing that's coming out in the D class as well is what went on with Anthony Fauci in the National Institute of Health and Virology, which involves the actual leaking of the gain-of-function research known as the corona bat virus from a lab in Wuhan, China, and how it spread around the world and led us into having to have a vaccine. And then how, like I said, that vaccine was mandated under Joe Biden and forced on the American people. If you worked in the medical field or if you worked in the elementary schools around the children, you had to get the vaccine or you were fired and lost your job. That has already now been debunked to have been unconstitutional. But it had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. So they've been doing this tactic. I would say the Democrats mainly have been using this tactic where, as it relates to Joe Biden back when he was in office, using the executive branch of the government to bypass the courts. And what that does is people got to bring their cases, bring it to the federal circuit, to the appeals, and then to the Supreme Court to get the ruling. So by the time that the Supreme Court initially ruled that the vaccine mandate was unconstitutional, the damage was already done because more than half the country had got the vaccine, and that was it. And the vaccine, in my humble opinion, was a biological weapon created to do population control. So everybody that kind of sides with the medical field and what they were doing and they were trying to save lives, that whole vaccine has caused countless deaths. And that information is also coming out. So I'm not saying anything conspiratorial. People were getting what is known as myocarditis, which is blood clots on various vital organs, massive heart attacks, athletes dropping on the field all over the world, young people that got the shot. Playing a basketball game, massive heart attack. Playing soccer, massive heart attack. So if you have any relatives that died of heart attacks or had diabetes and got the vaccine, and 9 out of 10 times the vaccine is what killed them off. And that's going to all come out as it relates to Dr. Fauci and what the Democrats and some Republicans were doing to overthrow the presidency of 2020, because they had to drop a biological weapon, which then allowed them to change the laws in all the states to have mail-in voting and not in-person voting. And that's where they used the ballots to overthrow Trump's presidential election in 2020, as well as other systems, like I was saying, which was hacking certain election systems, and they got caught by Space Force, which is an arm of the United States Air Force, extension by Donald Trump. He created the new agency, Space Force, and we joked about it, Star Wars. So Space Force's job is to deal in satellite warfare for missile interceptions and things of that nature, as well as intelligence gathering. They were able to intercept where the actual hacks were coming from. So Trump's been had all that information is back in 2020. That's why they were chasing him and raided Mar-a-Lago, claiming that he stole classified documents because he declassed the documents. And that's going to go back, so I stay on topic. When he declassified all of these documents, Cash Patel was in the room. That's why they've been attacking Cash, and they want him to be the FBI director, because he knows that Trump actually declassified this stuff. And I explained to the people, when something is declassified by the U.S. president, it takes 5 years for it to be available to the public. These are the things, I guess, they put in play so that the things that are declassed, if they got to put it back in classification, it doesn't just drop right away. So back in 2020, Trump declassed these documents. Guess where we at, everybody? 2025. So 5 years later, we're in 2025 under the Gregorian calendar, and here we go. Declass is going to bring the house down. Declassification of documentations is going to gut the federal government as we know it. Like if you take a snapshot of the government today, when all of this stuff about the money laundering and all that they're working on comes out, certain senators and congressmen are going to be overthrown or primaried out of the actual House and the Senate, because there's a lot of corruption going on in this country. And it ties to all of these things. Uranium One. It ties to the COVID. It ties to the war in the Ukraine. It ties to the attempt or actual overthrow of the United States government, of a duly elected president, Donald Trump, in 2020.
They call another FBI by Carl Davis. No,
that too. So what we're looking for here is transparency, because this is what they're selling the American people. Transparency has now returned to government, something that we've never seen in our lifetime at this magnitude. The government has been lying and covering up stuff as far back as JFK. Who was involved with that? When the JFK, RFK, MLK stuff drops, which I told y'all, go to Anna Paulina Lunas. She is the 13th Congresswoman of Florida. She's who they gave the declassification to. She put out a post a few days ago saying that the declass is coming in 45 days. They're not playing. This is all being done by the rule of law. So like it takes 5 years to declassify something. Once the 5 years is up, it takes like about 45 days for the final clearance. So we're talking about, I don't know exactly what day she posted that. It was a few days ago, either like 40 days or so. That is going to drop, and that's going to shake the world, because it's going to tie certain aspects of the federal government back then when they killed RFK, JFK, and MLK to the current players that's in the government and the stuff that they've been doing now. So this is big stuff. Kash Patel's nomination is huge, because if they're bringing transparency back to government, that's why I brought up January 6th and Ray Epps. There's a lot of confidential human sources that have been operating on these YouTube streets. Now, we know about some that are not confidential, that are former, but we know that those affiliations, like guys like Hassan Campbell, it's questionable. There's a lot of dudes that are operating as confidential human sources on this internet, YouTube streets, and now that it has been proven to the American people that the government has been weaponized. Let me add this, because we spoke about this. This platform, Carl came up with the term Obamanomics to kind of mirror Reaganomics and his understanding of this information, that under Obamanomics or Barack Obama's tenure, he put into play certain things that legalized, not made it law, but legalized actual propaganda being used against the American people when he did the Smith-Mundt. And let me say this, S-M-I-T-H-M-U-N, I think M-U-N-C-T, Smith-Mundt. I might have spelled that wrong, but if you do the Google search, you can find out what that is. That is where the actual propaganda was weaponized against we, the American people, by Barack Obama, where the intelligence agencies that would do more of foreign things were inverted to now include the domestic. So a lot of these charitable organizations and the fake news, that was all legalized under Barack Obama. So that might tie in to some of the stuff going on with Africa Bambaataa, Hassan Campbell, and why they've been playing this game that they've been playing on this internet now for about 8 years. They're in a whole lot of trouble. You don't get to do these things, man. You can't. These are crimes against humanity that has taken place on the internet, because it goes beyond the internet, and it deals with strategic lawsuits against public participation, where they reach out past the internet, and then they pull you into court cases, and it causes all kind of injuries. They call that now lawfare. Like warfare is a thing called lawfare, where the courts are being misused and people are being dragged into court and having to pay hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars in attorney fees to fight fake cases that are being put against them. All because people don't want them to participate in the public with certain discourse that basically breaks up their racketeering schemes.
Woo!
You understand?
Listen to one of them holler.
You understand? This is what's going on. That's why I've been telling, when I was more active in what happened to the boy movement, I was warning them. I didn't even know all of this that I know now, but I knew that much, that this stuff that y'all are doing on this internet is gonna line up, and we're getting closer. because there's a new FBI director, and if the government is going to be transparent, we want to find out how many confidential human sources they got on YouTube that's doing what Ray Epps did, which is coming out here with stories and telling everybody to storm the Capitol, and then when the people come to peacefully protest, they get arrested. So let's just say that what happened to the boy movement was a peaceful protest that got infiltrated by informants and turned into a violent riot, and then people got arrested or put with strategic lawsuits against public participation, because that's exactly what they did to all the people at the Capitol on January 6th. Trump had to pardon them all. Why did he pardon them all? Because he knew that it wasn't their fault. He knew that generally the people that came to peacefully protest didn't realize that they were in an actual intelligence sting operation, because you had a bunch of confidential human sources and fraternities as it relates to the DC police that were activating the people and pushing them into the Capitol, because they were firing tear gas behind them. So if you're out in a crowd of people peacefully protesting and tear gas is being shot behind you, the only thing that they could do was push forward. And who was at the front of the line? Ray Epps. The same guy that was there on January 5th telling everybody we got to storm the Capitol, and people was like, he's a Fed, we're not storming the Capitol tomorrow. But they wound up getting pushed into the Capitol by the DC police and the confidential human sources and various other intelligence operatives, so that they could try to say that Donald Trump's kicked off an insurrection, which is not even sound law, because he was the president at the time, and the only one that can call an insurrection is the one that's the president, because an insurrection is when you're trying to overthrow a president. So Joe Biden wasn't president. He didn't have the presidential power to call an insurrection. But what they did instead was they used various operatives in the House and the Senate and all the big news media agencies to lie and lie and lie for 4 years about Trump started the insurrection. Trump made this happen. No, the intelligence agencies weaponized under the previous administrations, like Barack Obama and the Smith-Monk Act and the House leaders, they're the ones that did all of that. And that's all about to come out under Kashyap Patel, y'all. They're going to charge these people at various levels.
My Ray Epps has been quiet for a couple weeks and stuff because of this thing that's going on. How you doing, Ray Epps? AKA Lord Rodney Clark, Khalil Lamont.
We want to know how many confidential human sources is causing an insurrection. Because really what they're doing is trying to overthrow the country with the stuff that they're doing through these intelligence operations or I would say disinformation campaigns. You got dudes making millions of dollars on this internet with fake news. Now, the First Amendment gives you freedom of speech rights. You can say what you want to say. But this is why Donald Trump also said he's going to be officially making a digital bill of rights. Because one thing that the U.S. Constitution didn't account for was the internet. The founding fathers of this country didn't know about internet back then. So the internet, which is more of a new phenomenon, is something that they're having to deal with all of these things: government interference, private companies owning their own platforms and who they can censor and ban, and all of these things being detrimental. Because when you have a right to freedom of speech, but when you tell everybody she's got a gun and everybody storms the Capitol, but then you find out that was fake news, that's a crime. See? So you can say what you want to say, but you still got to watch what you say, because what you say could be used against you in the court of law, as they say, right? What you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Use it if you want to.
So here it is. We on YouTube. We in the YouTube streets. Shout out to the YouTube streets. It started on this platform. You got a bunch of what I believe to be confidential human sources that was tagged in on this internet to insulate what was going on with Africa Bambaataa.
White 100 digital pit boss.
And now that the new FBI director is in and they're talking about transparency in government, we want to know what happened to the boy. Because y'all playing with the courts and stuff still to this day. It's supposedly a case. We want to see it. We want to see what y'all going to do. We ain't going to misuse the courts over here. We just going to let y'all keep doing what y'all doing while all this other stuff is going down, because we already did what we had to do over here. We already contacted certain agencies to let them know what was going on. And now that we understand that the government had been weaponized at that time and why certain people wasn't dealt with, now that Donald Trump is back in and they're ripping up all of these, they're ripping through all the federal agencies, they're laying off people, firing people, and they're reinstituting our government back by the people, for the people, the republic, not no democracy. The government is supposed to be subordinate to us, the people. It is through a contract. The government is not supposed to be weaponized against the people. They're supposed to definitely deal with threats that are domestic, but not at the magnitude and the manner at which they have been doing what they've doing, I want to say, for over at least the last 8 to 12 years. And it ties into all of these charitable organizations and these non-governmental organizations, which is just another way to say international. It's called non-governmental organizations. So,
Child USA, Marcy Hamilton. I'm still screaming your name too. But go ahead, my bad.
Yeah, Zulu Nation is on 6 of the 7 continents of the world with different missions. That is a non-governmental organization, i.e. an international charity. And then how it fits into these domestic charities. And then people is getting awards and stuff, being told that they're the greatest guy to ever expose, and they got an award from a charitable organization, hint, hint. And then you're out here getting donations and you're moving this fake news, and then all of that is just what you would call process crimes, like racketeering and money. That's one thing, but when it ties into contract killings, reaching out past the internet and physically harming people, now you're in a whole different realm. And that's exactly what they did as it related to your platform, brother. They reached out past the internet, had you going up and down highways to court, putting people's name in court cases and stuff that were false statements being made to the government based on public participation in what initially was them coming and asking the public to participate. See the Ray Epps connection?
All day.
So they come out here, they scream, the sky is falling, molestation is going on. We need everybody to rally. And the other thing that they were doing too, they were trying to incite vigilante justice, because they were trying to have people do something to Bambaataa when he hasn't been actually charged officially and convicted on none of the stuff that they said he did. They was just using public opinion to say he did all of that and that he needs to be dealt with somebody, in hopes that somebody would take vigilante justice when they could have took this to the federal courts and charged them people criminally and vetted this properly. They were using grifting, because now the guy that came out on YouTube is a millionaire and a social influencer playing in these YouTube streets still to this day. We told y'all to get that dude off this internet, because the things that he did as it related to threats on minor children and all of that, with the feds coming and all of that, was way out of bounds. Then he doubled down on death threats and bomb threats. That was actual domestic terrorism live on YouTube. And if you want to just say, oh, he was just saying that, no, his conglomerate reached out past the internet on some ET stuff and they touched people. See? That's where you messed up. You should have just left it YouTube banter. It was just YouTube banter. So you should have just let dudes rock and say what they want, but they couldn't allow that because they were running an operation.
And then you don't want to share the funds. You try to cut the guy out. They got the information that goes against y'all. You need a positive and a negative. Y'all do not know how to create a charge tool. Y'all tried to cut me out.
I agree with that. But you know what? I'm going to also say, in a way, that was the greatest thing that could happen, because being that you didn't generate no huge sums of money, they can't falsely charge you with no RICO. Because that's what the RICO is really all about. When you're it's RICO, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. When you're organized, you have influence, you're corrupt, and you're running rackets, you're bringing in big portions of money. And that would be the YouTube dollars through AdSense that dudes is making on these different platforms while they're up here pushing this fake news. And then because people are coming out against them, they're killing people too, or doing contract killings.
Global gangsters.
This is not a game. There's a case right now, I'm going to say this. There's a case right now where, and this is just allegations against Jay-Z for doing just that same thing. They just launched a case a couple days ago where they're charging a conglomerate of corporations with sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and contract killings. It's all in the paperwork in the federal courts. Now, that's just allegations. It's an ongoing case, but it gives you an insight into how they're using these corporations, these shell companies, these charities, these non-governmental organizations to launder the American taxpayer dollars and transactional schemes, and how they're killing people and leaving a trail of tears along the way. And it lines right up with the very veracity of what they came when they claimed that Africa Bambaataa was an international child predator and been molesting children for 40 years from Bronx River housing projects to Brazil to the UK. And then recently I saw them with some French dude claiming that Bam did something to him, a French guy. So they're playing around in their societies, the boule, and yes, there's a lot of fraternity stuff going on with Cash Patel and Trump and all of them too, but this is a war of frats. So at the end of the day, this confirmation is huge. So I don't want to, go too far off that. Let me just finish up because I don't want to be long-winded. Let me see if I missed anything. I spoke about Uranium One. I spoke about Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Razor, January 6th, and the COVID with Dr. Fauci. These are all things that are going to come out in declassification, and JFK, RFK, MLK will be released in about 40 some odd days by Anna Paulina Luna. And it's going to tie things together that we see going on in the current with the FBI, the CIA, and all of these different agencies, and how even before Barack Obama, they were weaponized against us. I would say that the true, absolute weaponization of these agencies started back after they killed JFK, but kicked up again at a high level after 9/11, after they hit the Twin Towers. And then George Bush combined the intelligence agencies. So this is not just one president. This is not just one political party. It involves Republicans and Democrats, but mainly the Democratic Party, because as I explained before, the Republicans that worked with the Democrats on a lot of this stuff have been properly termed rhinos, Republican in name only. They're not doing true Republican things. They're really Democrats.
Peace right quick. We got 3 minutes to the hour. If you can wrap it up.
Yeah, we can wrap it up because we got more shows to do as this stuff comes out. I think I covered enough. People, like I said, do your research, lock in, because, man, the sparks are going to fly. They're getting ready to start.
So this is hip-hop news, y'all. We're hip-hoppers. He's a rapper. I'm a rapper producer. He's a rapper producer. And everything is hip-hop. Documentary coming out on April the 1st. It's all for them. Khalil the Money did it for Layla Wills, Troy Star Terrain, and Africa Bambaataa, and Marcy Hamilton.
And that's it, man. At the end of the day, man, peace to the audience, peace to you. And I hope they get it right. They better get it right. And that's it, bro. I'm going to say peace, man.
All right. Peace. Love.
Throughout history, several historical groups and civilizations have been documented as having connections to ancient Israelite heritage while being of African descent. Here are some notable examples. The Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, a Jewish community that lived in Ethiopia for centuries. The Lemba people of southern Africa, who maintain traditions and practices similar to Jewish customs. various communities in West Africa that have maintained traditions and practices that scholars have linked to ancient Israelite customs. It's important to note that this topic involves complex historical, genetic, and cultural evidence that continues to be studied by scholars and researchers.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Israel Doctrines Google Hangout. I'm your host, Carl Albert Davis, and we will have a special guest today. And the title of today's show is How Panamania, Canada, and Greenland fits in Donald Trump expansion of USA. And with that, I would like to play a little audio, and then the show will start.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. Many things are happening that are exciting.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
What's the strategy?
Yeah. I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. Now, we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion.
Your position is clear, but have you directed your staff to take specific actions or draw plans? And can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time.
Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire?
No, economic force. Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. It's sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of $50 to $60 trillion worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. Before it started, I can tell you that. The deal could have been made just by an average deal maker. Deal could have been made on that. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them. And we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada, because Canada, they come through Canada too. And the drugs that are coming through are at record numbers. Record numbers.
Okay, everyone, that's the audio. And now we got our correspondent, Dr. Steele's in the house. He will be taking over. I will be listening and asking questions. But the majority of the show will be held by Dr. Skills. How you doing today, Dr.?
I'm good, bro. How you?
Oh, man, I'm good. When I took care of some business, now it's time for this business. You got the floor.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm gonna try to get through. We might have to break this up into maybe another show, but I'm gonna start off like, this is military mindset, because Israel doctrine is a little of a Tupac. I thought I'd bring some military discussions as it relates to protecting this land we call North America from its enemies. And we got a lot of enemies in the world, obviously, because of politics and many other things. But the title, How Panama, Canada, and Greenland Fit if Donald Trump expands the U.S. And the audio you was playing was current as it relates to Trump claiming that he wants to expand the U.S. territory, something that hasn't happened in a very long time, but I want people to look at the map and see the strategic location that Greenland fits in as it relates to what you can see: Russia, the U.S., Canada, and then you got the Arctic Ocean, right? And then you got Greenland. Now, I'm gonna just do some brief stuff. Everything that I'm speaking about, I want the audience to do their own research, because though I'm gonna do a lot of drops of information, I think that the audience listening should do their own research as it relates to this. And then I want to add this last thing, and then I'll get started. When I came to Israel Doctrine, I saw that he was pushing and teaching Israel Doctrine, basically the Bible, KJV, 66 books. And anybody that understands Christianity and the nation of Israel and all of those things, they know that the Bible deals with a third of the Bible deals with prophecy. Another third deals with history. The whole book could be looked at as prophecy, but the Bible is prophetic. So when I came to Israel Doctrine, what I noticed is that he was doing a lot of forecasting in the so-called conscious community. And then I coined that this platform is a forecasting network. It's kind of like when you're watching the weather and you want to know what the weather's going to be like. You know, when you see storm clouds forming, it's 9 out of 10 times going to rain. When you see the wind kick up, you might get a tornado. So though Israel Doctrine broadcasts a lot of information, it's a forecasting information as well. So what I want to do is deal with the current events as it relates to these locations, but then a little bit later on, I'm going to start to build with Carl, hopefully, about some eschatology. And if people want to know what eschatology is, it's just the study of end time prophecies. And if you watch the platform, as of late, you might be able to go back and watch some of Carl's videos. He's been having debates with a group of people who claim to be full preterists. Full preterism believes that all things in the biblical account as it relates to prophecy was all fulfilled in AD 70. And that creates a group of people who say they're full preterists, whereas Carl in the Israel Doctrine has spoken that they're partial preterists. And I agree with Carl. I'm also a partial preterist that believes, though the Bible has a lot of prophecy that was fulfilled in AD 70, those prophecies also span past AD 70 all the way to the current, and then what we're going to see coming up. So I'm saying all that to say I'm going to deal with the current events, and then we're going to talk a little eschatology of how the Bible lays out where all these events that we're talking about ultimately is heading as it relates to the return of Jesus Christ to this earth and the establishment of God's kingdom on earth. So I'm going to start just basically with, giving people a brief understanding. We got 3 locations that Trump is trying to secure or expand the U.S. territories to include. One is Panama, the other's Canada. Obviously, most people know probably more about Canada than anything else, but also Greenland. So just understanding Canada real quick, and you can wiki search this stuff. So I'm just giving basics on these locations. Canada is a country in North America. Obviously, it has 10 provinces, 3 territories extend from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean and northward into the Arctic Ocean. So that's like the key for the strategy of why Trump is trying to either make Canada the 51st state or have it become an expansion of U.S. territory. Because if you look at the map, you're going to see that the Canada's location, the U.S., Russia, and Greenland, they all pretty much circle around that Arctic Ocean, right? So as a strategic way to protect the United States, Canada becoming a 51st state would allow the U.S. to have a little bit more foothold in that Arctic Ocean more directly, as opposed to indirectly Canada being an ally right now. Trump wanting to basically make it a 51st state. He's trying to be able to bring the U.S. military closer to that Arctic Ocean, which goes to the next place, real quick, and I'm gonna try to be as quick and not as long-winded as possible. So the next place we're gonna be talking about is Greenland. Greenland is a self-governing country within the Kingdom of Denmark. It is the largest of three constituent countries of the kingdom, and other two being metropolitan Denmark and the Faroe Islands. So that's just a basic location for where Greenland is. Greenland is controlled by the Kingdom of Denmark. Now, this is going to be important for what we talk about later, because Denmark is currently a part of the European Union. So basically, it's a territory under Denmark, but Denmark being a part of the European Union, which includes nations like Germany, France. It used to include the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is no longer a part of the European Union, but there's many countries that have come together in a union, and Denmark being the holder of that Greenland is part of the European Union. So again, I want everybody to stay focused on the map that's on the screen, because the first thing is Canada, and then you got Greenland. And if you see the strategic locations of Canada and Greenland as it relates to the US and Russia, everything is centered around that Arctic Circle. Right, so and I'm gonna get to Panama a little later, but we're gonna stay up in the north right now, because what I believe Trump is trying to do is he's trying to put a military stronghold in Canada and Greenland to avert a war that has been being spoken about and rumored in our lifetime, World War III. Trump, even while he was campaigning, said he's going to stop World War III from happening, because the political powers that be that are in opposition to him is trying to bring this world into a global war, which is going to involve thermonuclear weapons and all kind of weapons that are secret, that we might not even know exist. And this is all prophetic in the Bible. As I said, we'll get to that in a little while. But Greenland, you see the strategy, because I'm going to read something to you, and what I'm going to read to you is coming from The Guardian. This was an article that was put together last year as it relates to that Arctic Ocean. And so, all right, so you got, like I said, you got the map. Everybody sees Greenland, everybody sees Canada, they see the US, they see Russia, and they see Iceland, and all that's wrapped around that Arctic Circle or the North Pole. Right, so let me just read an article about what Russia has been doing in that area as late as last year. So at a naval parade in 2023, Vladimir Putin established a new maritime doctrine establishing Russia as a great maritime power. So basically in 2023, Vladimir Putin established a whole new doctrine that he was officially establishing Russia as a great maritime power. Now, everybody might know the history of Russia. I'm going to get into a little bit of that later, but we know that Russia was once our ally during World War II, after the America, Britain, and the Allied forces took down the Nazi regime, Germany was divided between Russia and America. That's why we had the Berlin Wall. So on the east side of Germany, Russia took control of those territories, and on the west side of Germany on the wall, America took control of those territories, and we were once allied with Russia. That us being allies with Russia, later, as everybody knows, it built up after World War II, and then we went into the Cold War, where Russia and the U.S. been adversarial to each other all throughout that time ever since. So right now, Russia is listed as an enemy to the United States. So keep that in mind when I'm reading to you about what's going on in that Arctic Circle. So at a Navy parade in 2023, like I said, Vladimir Putin established new maritime doctrine. So controlling the Arctic strategic resources and value has long been ambition of Soviet and Russian leaders historically. So for a long time in history, when the old Soviet Union all the way into modern Russia under Putin, they always wanted to take control of that area because they believe it's strategic for resources, military purposes, etc. So in 2007, Russia placed its flag on the seabed of the North Pole and claimed an area contested by Canada and Denmark. And that's important because, again, when you look at the map and you see what I had explained earlier, you see that Greenland, which is a territory of Denmark, and Canada have been at odds with Russia over this whole transaction that relates to that Arctic Circle. And Russia put a flag on the seabed of the North Pole and claimed an area that was contested by Canada and Denmark in 2007. Now we go a little bit ahead to last year. In 2023, the data in Russia's claim was validated by the UN Commission. So Russia placed this flag on the seabed and said, yo, all this territory in this Arctic Ocean on the floor, we claiming all of this. And then they got validated in 2023 in the United Nations Commission for having the right to claim that as sovereign territory of Russia as it relates to that Arctic Circle. The Russians claimed a little under 6,900 acres of ocean floor in the North Pole, which has 17.3 billion tons of oil and 85.1 trillion cubic meters of gas. So already Russia is trying to expand its imperial empire by claiming that location in the Arctic Ocean with a trillion cubic meters of gas and oil that is going to come to them if they're able to fully lock that down and get everything going, right? So Russia owns nearly half of the polar territory with its state-of-the-art military bases and updated air bases in Alexandria land close to Denmark, right? So back to Denmark and Greenland. You got Russia trying to assert itself in areas and territories that get them into a modern warfare with the European Union, because Denmark is part of NATO and part of the European Union. You got Germany, France, Italy, etc., and all of these countries that would definitely not want to see Vladimir Putin expand his military into the Arctic Ocean at the manner at which he's doing it, and then line up to take over the world as it relates to trade routes and all of those things. So I'm going to go a little further. Since 2005, it's opened 50 Soviet area military bases, including 13 air bases, 10 radar stations, and 20 border outposts. So you can see, like I said, Russia's in that Arctic Circle, and they're building up their military with bases, air bases, radar stations, etc. Russia also modernized its northern fleet, upgrading numerous submarines capable of launching long-range thermonuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles designed to evade U.S. sensors and defenses. So now this article is starting to delve into Russia's ability to bring thermonuclear weapons, long-range missiles, and hypersonic missiles into that area in the Arctic Circle, and to even evade U.S. sensors. So back to the original thing, because I don't want to get off topic, we talking about how Panama, Canada, and Greenland fit if Donald Trump can expand the U.S. So this is talking about why Trump is trying to expand the U.S. further out into Canadian territory and Greenland, because it relates to that Arctic Ocean and the Arctic Circle with the North Pole and Russia and all the trade routes and the ability, in my opinion, to actually attack the United States from the north. Now, history tells us that the only time the United States was ever really attacked from an outside source was when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in World War II. That brought us into World War II. We've as a nation are blessed, I believe, the North America's blessed, because what it always had was two great oceans separating us from most of our adversaries. You got the Pacific Ocean to the west, and you got the Atlantic Ocean to the east. So if a nation from overseas was really trying to come and attack us, they would have to come across those great oceans, and 9 out of 10 times we will be able to detect them. But when you look at what's going on in the Arctic Circle with Russia, this is another Achilles heel to the protection of the United States of America as it relates to our enemies, because they can use the Arctic Ocean with their submarines to launch missiles over Canada and hit the United States with thermonuclear weapons. Now, if that sounds crazy, we see what's going on in Ukraine currently, and the Russians just recently showed the world that they have a hypersonic missile that can deliver a nuclear payload, and no world systems of missile defense can block it based on how fast this missile travels. Now, they hit the Ukraine with the missile. They just didn't put the actual thermonuclear payload on it to show the world that they wasn't BSing. Meaning that this thermonuclear weapon that they have created with their scientists can break any missile defense system currently in play based on the speed. And they use this weapon. Everybody can do their research and type Russia thermal hypersonic missile and the Ukraine war and see that just recently they used this weapon on the Ukrainians without a nuke on it, just to show the world that Russia's military is reaching a level that no nation on the earth currently can block as it relates to nukes. So back up to that Arctic Ocean and what I'm reading about Russia and the strategic location of Greenland, and why would Donald Trump want Greenland, and why would Donald Trump want Canada? Because he's trying to save this country from World War III and an attack from our enemies. A lot of people have their distaste for Donald Trump, but I believe Donald Trump is a wartime president because he understood what was being done by what a lot of people call the deep state. The deep state used to be a terminology that if you said it, you was a conspiracy theorist. Now, over time, the deep state is being more understood to be the administrative state of the United States of America, or the fourth branch of government, and this includes most of the top media companies. They have been hijacked by a political party. We tend to call them Democrats. And I want to make this clear. When I'm having this discussion, this is not to alienate all Democrats. I'm talking about the upper echelon of the Democratic Party and what they've been doing as it relates to international affairs over a long period of time. And I also want to make this clear. It also includes Republicans, because many Republicans who side with the Democratic Party have also been a part of this build-up to what I believe is an attack on the United States of America, where they plan for us to lose the war and then overthrow the United States Constitution and bring us into a new world order. That's just part of it. But I'm speaking about the political parties because the Democrats have been mainly in power since the 1960s. Yes, we've had Republican presidents like Ronald Reagan, the Bushes, but what I'm trying to show is what Trump was able to do by creating MAGA, which a lot of people have to understand the politics. He was able to show that there is a separation between true Republicans and those who are rhinos, is a terminology. Republican in name only. And when I say that, is what do you mean Republican in name only? Well, that would include many of the Republicans that we've seen, like who sat on the actual January 6th committee, the daughter of Dick Cheney. There's a lot of other Republicans that they have to show the people are Republican in name only, meaning that they're listed as Republicans, but they really side with the Democrat Party and they're not real Republicans. This is why Trump created MAGA. And then he had to take over the Republican Party, place his daughter-in-law as one of the heads of the Republican Party, and show the American people that these people that I'm selecting now are real Republicans. They're not going to side with the other side of the political aisle or the Democrats until this country comes together and gets this thing right. Because what that Democratic Party has been doing with some Republicans is leading us into a global thermonuclear war with various countries, World War III. And if we don't get this right now, we would have been in that war already. I'll get a little bit more to that, but I'm saying all of that to bring it back home. So you see Greenland, you see the strategy of the North Pole and the Arctic Circle, you see Canada, you see USA, and you see Russia, and you know that Greenland, being an actual territory of Denmark, is an asset of the European Union, right? So I'm gonna finish up with what I was reading from the article. So I spoke about all of the air bases and the radar stations. Russia's modernizing its Northern Fleet upgrading numerous submarines, so back to the submarines, capable of launching long-range thermonuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles designed to evade U.S. sensors and defenses. So what I'm trying to show y'all, and this is a key because there's been a lot of back and forth about global warming, right? And I want to speak about global warming because you have an argument going on in the globe that the Earth is either cooling down or heating up. That's where global warming in the topic came from. You have people who believe the Earth is actually heating up. Now, the people who believe Earth is heating up, they have a strong argument because a lot of those North Polar caps have been melting. And I'm going to read you something as it relates to the melting of that Arctic Circle, right? It says, Arctic free from summer ice by 2040 to 2045. So basically, based on what they call global warming, they believe that by 2040, that ice in that Arctic area is going to be melted in the summertime months. This is something that wasn't happening in modern history, meaning you can go, and I want to make sure everything I say, you can go look up in your leisure to all the listeners, go look up the melting of the North Pole caps. There's videos of huge chunks of ice just falling in the ocean, and they relate that to climate change and global warming, right? So by 2040, when the summer hits, that whole area up in that Arctic region can allow for submarines and different underwater vessels to actually come up and then launch thermonuclear weapons over Canada and hit the United States. So this is why Trump wants Greenland, because he wants to set up military bases in the race against Russia, being able to secure that area. They're already way ahead of the world as it relates to that. So, all right, you got the actual breakdown on how Russia is trying to sneak subs up into the north above Canada and then strategically put us under lockdown here in the United States as it relates to thermonuclear war. Now, there's other reasons that Trump wants Greenland that I'll speak to briefly, which is that minerals is another reason, because Greenland has a lot of the underground minerals that China is benefiting from as it relates to semiconductors and building computer chips. If we can secure Greenland, then we will have access to those minerals and we won't be able to be blocked as it relates to our integrated circuits, which is the microchips that go into all of the devices, because we won't be dependent on Africa and places like China to get those minerals as it relates to building up the United States of America's technological infrastructure, Silicon Valley, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important that people understand that, like I said, what Trump is trying to do as it relates to making the U.S. a larger country by expanding back to these territories, some of them old, because we're going to get to the Panama Canal, but some of them new, like Greenland, it has all to do with that Arctic Circle. So I'm going to close out on this portion of what I'm talking about with the very last thing to show you that Russia has been strategically coming up in that Arctic, in the circle in the North Pole to set up itself for the gas and the oil. So that's the minerals that they're going to obtain, but also strategically, militarily, they have been working on a way to basically lock down the United States of America. And when I say that, the last thing I'm going to speak on, let me just get my little notes here. What I'm reading to you guys can all look up this article or look up about this. This is about nuclear-powered icebreaker, right? So a nuclear-powered icebreaker is an icebreaker with an onboard nuclear plant power that produces power for the vessel's propulsion system. So this whole aspect of what a nuclear icebreaker is, do you guys know that Russia is the only country that has these type of ships? They're called nuclear icebreakers. They have they're ran nuclear, and they're using these icebreakers to break through that Arctic Circle, because there's still portions of the Arctic Circle that are nothing but ice with water underneath it. So they've been using these nuclear power icebreakers for a long time to break away the ice and allow to get under the Arctic Ocean, but it also allows them to bring their submarines in, like I said before. So that's what we're looking at when we looking at Greenland and we looking at why Canada. It has various reasons, but I'm speaking to the military ones and giving y'all a little breadcrumbs on some of the other reasons. Yes, it's for minerals. Yes, it's for strategic locationing, but it's mainly because of military conflict. Which will bring me down to the south, the Panama Canal. Everybody heard that Trump feels that the Panamanians slighted America after Jimmy Carter gave them back the canal. People don't realize the Panama Canal was given back to the sovereignty of Panama for $1 after the United States helped them build it. And in the process of building that canal, 38,000 people is alleged to have died from malaria. So it took years and years for them to build that canal. America or the United States sent all of its workers and people, and they work with different countries to dig that trench that we call the Panama Canal. But in the process, because once they started digging up underneath those rivers and stuff, the mosquitoes came, and back then they didn't have something to block the malaria that it caused, and people were dying left and right. So like almost like a war, it was a war to build the Panama Canal, and the U.S. lost a lot of people's lives building that for the Panamanians. Now, in the current trend, Panama has sided with China as it relates to that strategic waterway, which the Panama Canal is capable of bringing all of the trade that comes from with the Atlantic Ocean and connect the Pacific Ocean and bring things up into the Gulf of Mexico, which is another thing that Trump said he's going to do. He's naming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. So Trump is trying to strategically, with Panama, protect the United States from its enemies to the South and Central America, strategically take Greenland so that he can protect us from the North as it relates to Canada and the Arctic Ocean and Russia, and the European Union, because I want to say this. Currently, the European Union is an ally to the United States and Russia's an enemy. My belief is that Trump is going to technically flip those poles, meaning that what we're about to see is a reunification with Russia as it relates to them being our own World War II ally, and we're going to watch the European Union move more away from America, which should startle the globe, because if anybody knows the history of the country Germany being the strongest economy in the European Union, then the fact that what Trump is doing as it relates to working with Russia, that puts fear in the Germans' hearts, and it's forcing Germany now to say that they need a strong leader to come and sit inside of Germany because of what's going on with the United States as it relates to Russia. And if you look at history, the Germans fear the Russians because when Germany was divided between Russia and the United States post-World War II, word is the Russians were treating the Germans very harshly. This is why, if you look back in history, people were so happy when the Berlin Wall came down because they were able to now go from east to west. But people were always trying to climb over that Berlin Wall from the east side of Germany because a lot of people were claiming that the Russians were raping and pillaging the Germans when they had control of East Germany after World War II, and that the Americans were treating them a lot better. So that's why people were trying to climb over the wall east to west and go to West Germany, where it was occupied by America as opposed to the occupation of East Germany by the Russians. So all of this stuff is relative because, like I said, this is current events. I'm speaking about it now as it relates to current events, but I want to deal a little bit with Bible eschatology because it's like, where are all of these events going? What's the purpose of me telling you about military conflict as it relates to the North Pole and in the South with Panama? Because the Bible, in my opinion, is sure, is sound. And the sure word of Bible prophecy, if you trust in Jesus Christ and you receive that Holy Spirit properly, when you're reading these things, the Spirit will guide you and it will show you where all of this is leading. And the question is, to me, Trump is only going to be able to give America a short time of resurgence. I believe the sure word of Bible prophecy, which says that we're going to be plunged into what the Bible calls the Great Tribulation, or a war that is going to be like a war we've never seen since the beginning of time. And it's going to kill a large majority of the people on this planet. We can call that World War III. It's been rumored. Wars and rumors of wars was something that Christ spoke would be going on in the latter days before his return. And I can say that World War III has been a war that has been rumored to be coming ever since World War II, all the way into the previous presidential candidacy with Trump. He was saying, I'm going to avert World War III. And what people need to understand as that relates to Germany, it has a lot to do with certain neo-Nazi groups that are spread out all over the world, right? So now let me talk about Germany, because I'm gonna shift a little bit. Like I said, we spoke about why Trump is strategically grabbing these locations. I'm moving now over to Germany and the European Union. And the reason why I'm gonna go to Germany and the European Union, it has a lot to do with the book of Daniel and the book of Revelations. I'll get to how that relates in a second, but I just want to break down some things about what happened in modern Germany post-World War II, right? So I'm gonna be reading you guys two things that should show us that the Nazis weren't totally defeated in World War II. They went underground, and the children of the Nazis, which would be a lot of top key leaders around the world today, the Nazi Party didn't go anywhere. It went underground. Now, if that sounds crazy, everybody that's listening to this, I want you guys in your Google search or your DuckDuckGo search to just search Operation Paperclip. Now, Operation Paperclip, and I'm going to read something briefly, was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the United States for government employment after the end of World War II in Europe. Between 1945 and 1959, several were confirmed to be former members of the Nazi Party, including the SS and the SA. So here you have it. This was the information, Operation Paperclip, declassified, and we've been speaking a lot about declassification of documentation, but these documents were declassified under the CIA, which admits that the United States had a secret intelligence program with 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to bring them right to the United States of America. And this is post-World War II. So when you go back to the trials of Nuremberg, if people know some basic history, after World War II, the Nazis were tried in Nuremberg, and certain things were put into international law that they can never ever rise up and build a German empire in the manner at which Hitler did in World War II and what they did in World War I ever again. These things were decided in Nuremberg. But as we see, because of the United States sins, the very country we live in, they went and got those scientists and engineers and technicians, obviously because a lot of the things that were being done in the concentration camps were basically done with human beings, and they were able to run all kind of tests and things that you would never be able to run in any other atmosphere as it relates to human beings. And they wanted to get that information, so the United States Central Intelligence Agency created Operation Paperclip to give those scientists that escaped World War II Germany jobs right here in the United States, and they've been here ever since. And I'll just give a little sidebar. Some years ago on the History Channel, I watched an actual show where they admitted that the family of Hitler was given political asylum in the United States in New York City and Long Island. So the family of Hitler maintains a hidden identity, but they live in the United States of America to this day. And I'm showing how under Operation Paperclip, right? Now, the second thing, so it's like, okay, so the U.S. provided asylum to all of these Germans, right? How did they do it? Okay, now the second thing I'm going to read, I want everybody to look up rat lines. Now, it's funny we talking about rat lines because we know that in the streets, we call people who snitch and all of that rats. So I'm about to talk about the rat lines. This is German. With systems of escape routes for German Nazis and other fascists fleeing Europe from 1945 onwards in the aftermath of World War II. These escape routes mainly led towards havens in the Americas, particularly in Argentina, though also in Paraguay, Colombia, Brazil, Uruguay, Mexico, Peru, Guatemala, Ecuador, and Bolivia, and as well as the United States, Canada, Australia, Spain, and Switzerland. So these rat lines, we just spoke about Operation Paperclip. We know that the Germans were able to seek political asylum. A lot of their scientists were spread out, but this is how they were able to move them out of Germany. It's called the rat lines. So there were two primary routes. The first went from Germany to Spain, then to Argentina. The second went from Germany to Rome, then to Genoa, and then South America. So basically what that's explaining is there was like two ways or two routes that the Operation Paperclip would use these rat lines to bring the actual Germans out of Germany and give them new political asylum in all these Central and South American countries and spread them out. So when you hear people talking about recently Elon throwing up the Hail Hitler, they got to deal with it from the right angle because the United States has been harboring so-called Nazi scientists and everything since World War II. And the reason why I'm explaining it from the Operation Paperclip to the rat lines aspect of it, because this is where the Catholic Church comes into play. Okay? So you got Germany, you got World War II, Italy, you got all of these countries that did all of these atrocities, not only to the Jewish people that they put in the death camps, but I'm going to expand that out and say that Italy ravaged Ethiopia. So not only did they Holocaust all of those Jewish people, they also Holocaust a bunch of Africans, because if you go back into the history of Menelik II, in Ethiopia, he stopped Italy from annexing Ethiopia, and during World War II, Italy got its payback. It got its payback when it attacked Ethiopia under Mussolini. This is why if you go in history, you will see the one that they call Haile Selassie. He had to flee Ethiopia because he was the grandson of Menelik, and he had to seek refuge with the Queen of England. So if you go back, you can maybe find this if you look this up. Haile Selassie in England. And this is around the time of World War II. He rode in a British motorcade with the Queen of England. This had a lot to do with the annexation of Ethiopia and the attack that that Mussolini put on them in retribution for what Menelik II, who sat over Ethiopia when Italy tried to run up and raid them the first time. He killed all them Italian soldiers and sent them running and tucking their tail. They came back in World War II under Mussolini, and then they ravaged Ethiopia. That kind of gets left out when we talk about the Holocaust. Now, another key aspect of what they did when they raided Ethiopia is they took the 5 pillars of Axum. So 5 Blessed was taken from Ethiopia and put on ships. After they beat the Ethiopians in World War II, they whipped them people, and then they took their symbols and they raised up the 5 pillars of Axum in St. Peter's Square in Rome. Those pillars were returned to the Ethiopians. Don't quote me, I don't got that in my notes. The year that the actual Italians or Rome returned the 5 pillars that they took from Ethiopia when they raided Ethiopia in World War II under Mussolini. Now back to my point. So you have post-World War II, you have actual Nazis that were given asylum in various countries, including the U.S., through Operation Paperclip, and they were able to sneak out of Germany through what they call the rat lines. And now I'm going to make the Vatican connection. The rat lines were supported by rogue elements in the Vatican, particularly an Austrian bishop and four Croatian clergy of the Catholic Church who sympathized. So here we see a connection between a church and a military power. And this is where I'm going to get in, like I said, when I get into the eschatology shortly ahead, that the Bible answers all the questions of where's all of this leading? Where's everything we see going on in America today with Trump, Greenland, Panama? Why are these things happening? What role does the European Union, and as I explained, the European Union is a combination of nations, right, that is ran mainly by Germany. Now, Germany hasn't really been able to expand its military because the United States has been the protectorate of Germany since World War II. That's why you're seeing Trump arguing with NATO, because Trump feels that the United States is the #1 contributor to NATO, which is an army put together of various countries in the European Union to protect it from Russia. But the problem that Trump has with NATO is that the United States pays the most money when you got huge economies in Germany and other countries in Europe, and they're not even fitting the bill for the thing that protects them. Now that has a double-edged sword to it, because as Trump moves towards make America great again, or focusing more on the internal issues of the United States of America, the door is being open for a rise of a militarized Germany and a combination of church and state with the modern Catholic Church, where they're going to crusade through this whole globe and kill more people than you've ever seen in any history of any war. And that's where I will deal with some of our full preterists, because full preterism believes that all things were fulfilled in AD 70. But we believe as partial preterists that the things that happened in AD 70, yes, they were partial fulfillments of the prophecies, but the vision that Daniel got was a vision that extended out into AD 70, past AD 70, and all the way to the return of Jesus Christ, which is shortly ahead. And then the thing that I'm going to do to show that the Bible is sound is that when you utilize your Bible in the right way and you understand in the Holy Spirit what Christ and what all of his prophets were relaying, you will see that the Roman Empire, though it fell after AD 70, it rose right back up in the earth, and the Bible says it will raise up 7 times. Really 10. There will be 10 kings. But the Bible mainly focuses on the 7 kings that come out of the 10 as it relates to the harlot or a false church riding on a beast. And this is all dealing with the book of Daniel. So I'm going to go a little bit into that so we can build a little bit. Maybe Carl might want to say something, but I'm going to just start off. And let me say this too. What people got to understand about modern Germany and what they were able to do post-World War II is when you look at the European Union, Germany got wise. Hitler at that time was annexing various countries. He was running into countries and killing people, and bloodshed was crazy during World War II because Hitler was going and taking countries by force. What the European Union was able to do post-World War II is take most of the countries that Hitler was taking by force in World War II back and put them right up under Germany without firing one shot. They used the economics to do it this time. And I'm going to give you an example of it. I'm going to tell you, Germany defeated and occupied. So this is World War II. This is countries that Germany waded through blood to take over in World War II. They attacked and they occupied Poland, which they attacked in September 1939. Denmark. There goes Denmark. Remember, Denmark controls Greenland, so I'm going to stay on topic. We talking about Trump, why Panama, why Greenland, and why Canada. So Denmark, being the holder of Greenland, was taken over by force in April of 1940. Norway in April of 1940, Belgium, May of 1940, the Netherlands, May of 1940, Luxembourg, May of 1940, France, Yugoslavia, and Greece. So Hitler was annexing countries all throughout Europe and trying to take over the world during World War II, but he was doing it by force. The reason I'm telling y'all that is, remember what I said, the Netherlands is a part of the European Union now. And they didn't have to go take it by force. They took it economically by getting them to join the European Economic and Coal and Steel Community, and which later was formed the European Union, with Germany at the head. And all we waiting for as it relates to prophecy is to see the Catholic Church sit another man like Hitler inside of German politics, and then what the Bible tells us is that that empire is going to wade through seas of blood, killing Israelites, like they did in the first century when they killed most of God's prophets that came out after Jesus Christ established his church on with Peter. So over here on Carl's channel, he talks a lot to people that listen to him about how the first Christians were Israelites, and most of them were put to death by the Roman Empire so that Rome can take over Christianity and claim that they're the vicars of Jesus Christ in the place of the people who are following the Israel doctrine, keeping the Saturday as the Sabbath and the God's commands and things of that nature. So let me just drop a jewel, because in the book of Israel, in Exodus, Israel was told how to build a tabernacle, right? The altar also had to be built, and that's in Exodus 27:1. So I'm paraphrasing. Make sure everybody writes these verses down and go read that Bible, because I'm not here to do all the work for you. I'm here to give you the breadcrumbs, and for everybody listening to go test what I'm saying. Go do your own research, and if the Lord guides you, you should line up more than not on understanding what the Bible's telling us. So Israel was told how to build the tabernacle. You guys can go to Exodus 26 to see how the tabernacle is supposed to be built. Then an altar also had to be built, and that's in Exodus 27, right? There also was a lamp, and that's important. And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure olive oil beaten full of light to cause the lamp to burn always. That's in verse 20 of Exodus 27. So now that lamp is important, because when you go into the book of Revelations, there's a mystery of 7 stars which thou sawest. This is Revelation 1:20. The mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. There goes that candle or that oil that had to be lit in the ancient Israel in a lamp setup, and then it will also move through the generations post AD 70 through all God's eras of his church. So the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. So when you're looking at the candlesticks in the book of Revelation, you know, all right, that's 7 churches. Those 7 churches go as follow: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. And if you want to know where you can read about those 7 churches also, that's in Revelations 2 and 3. It outlines those churches. But now I'm saying that because I'm going to get into my full premise right here. Daniel, the book of Daniel, unlocks the book of Revelation, meaning that you have to unlock Revelations, understanding the timeline of the events that Daniel foresaw as it relates to AD 70. But I'm making the argument post AD 70 as well, all the way to the return of Jesus Christ. Now, my premise on that I'm going to use to make the argument against people who are full preterists that believe all things were fulfilled in AD 70. I have many premises, but one of them is that the Bible says that when Jesus returns to this earth, all the other kingdoms of the world is going to be brought into the house of Israel. There will be no other kingdom but one kingdom. It also says that the children of Israel are going to inherit all the kingdoms of the earth. So we live in the modern world where you got the nation of Israel, but you still got Germany, you still got the Gentile nations, the Asians, and all of that. The Bible, if you take what Christ told us literally, he said that when he comes and he returns to this earth, there will be no more other nations. It's going to be everybody's Israel. Because he's going to beat all those nations' swords into plowshares, which is another premise that I have. There's no way you can tell me that the greatest war, as Daniel speaks about, as it relates to the first fulfillment of AD 70, was greater than the wars that were fought in this earth post AD 70. That includes all the crusades of the Roman Catholic Church, all the way up to World War I and then World War II, which we all know was called the war to end all wars, because there was no war in the earth that could even compare to World War II as it relates to the use of the thermonuclear or atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So you can't make the argument that the book of Daniel, that the full preterists make using the book of Daniel, that all of this was fulfilled in AD 70, because there's certain prophecies that break down how in the war that we're speaking about that happens post AD 70 is going to be a war that's greater than any war that ever happened in the history of man. And anybody with a brain can see that being potentially true, because we're talking now about eschatology and where all this is leading. A World War III that involves thermonuclear weapons, where various countries have the ability to launch those type of weapons, as well as certain weapons that we don't even know exist, or we have an idea like laser weapons and hypersonic missiles and all kind of things that can literally destroy and kill every man, woman, and child on this planet 100 times over with the amount of nuclear weapons that various countries now have. And if we go into anything of a thermonuclear war, it could kill every man, woman, and child on the planet. We've never had a time like this. 80, 70, they weren't using thermonuclear weapons. They didn't have these capabilities. So back to Daniel, right? I think that me and Carl can agree on this, that the image or the statue in Daniel, it breaks down world ruling empires, right? So let me get this lined up right.
4 great dynasties.
Yep.
Babylon,
4 world ruling empires.
Babylon, the Medes and the Persians, then Greek, Rome.
Exactly, and we can find that in Daniel 2, verse 31 through 34. Nebuchadnezzar saw a great image whose head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part iron and part clay. And as Carl said, we agree on that. Those 4 dynasties or empires that were explained in Daniel are the Chaldean Empire. They were followed by the Persians, then the Greco-Macedonians, and finally we got the Roman Empire. Now, again, because we're partial preterists, we agree that all things were fulfilled in AD 70 as it related to what the book of Daniel was speaking about for that time leading into AD 70. But the vision that Daniel got was so crazy, it went out past that all the way to where we at now and to what is culminating in the return of Jesus Christ.
Well, let's say this. It was due to the fact that it had been prophesied that Israel and the temple will be taken out.
Yep, I'll agree with that.
So for Israel and the temple to be taken out, 70 AD had to be fulfilled. It was fulfilled. When he took the temple and the priests, killing the Levitical priesthood, he put Israel into captivity. Israel disappeared and the Edomites became Israelites.
Now, as it relates to that, right? So now we agree that those things in AD 70 was fulfilled. Now, we talking about the partial preterism and what was going to happen after AD 70, all the way up into the modern Gregorian calendar year of where we at now, 2025. A lot has happened to show us that those 2 legs, because if you notice, when you look at the statue of Nebuchadnezzar that he saw in the dream that was being interpreted by God via his prophet Daniel, you saw that it had 2 legs. And that two legs is symbolic to the Roman Empire because Rome was split into two, right? They had their one capital in Rome and the other was in Constantinople. So that's showing, see, let me make this clear, because people who kick against the Bible, like a lot of people, like I said, a third of the Bible deals with history. So you should be able to go to secular history and line up that, yes, there is an account in history where Jerusalem was sacked in AD 70. And then everything that proceeded out of that. Yes, Rome was in Constantinople and had Rome as two of its capitals at the same time, and that's why you get two legs of iron that lead all the way down to the feet of iron and clay mixed. The iron and clay mix that the feet are represented is what we're going to see shortly ahead, as we see Rome and Germany and Italy come together for one last hurrah, World War III.
Well,
but I'm gonna give you. Go ahead.
A lot of that you were saying about the European common market is what they call it. It's where the Europeans come together under a treaty called the Roman Treaty, so on and so forth.
Now we're going to talk about the fourth kingdom, because we know that inside of Daniel and Revelation it speaks about the four world ruling empires, but mainly the fourth one. That's the one that we're looking at now, because now we under the time of Rome, right? And history reveals that the Roman Empire is real and it existed, right? The Romans attained world domination around the time of 30 BC, ruled over 500 years until they were crushed in AD 476, right? So the Roman Empire, the ancient Roman Empire fell. We all know that, right? The Roman Empire is represented by the two legs of iron, symbolizing the two ancient capitals, Rome and Constantinople. Right now, Daniel 2 and 35 says, then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together and became like the chaff of the summer threshfloors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Now we know that rock is Jesus Christ. So from a eschatology standpoint, if I take that literal, it says that when Jesus comes, he's going to smash these empires and they're never going to be able to operate in the earth again. So that's an argument to make, that the fact that we're even living under a modern Roman Empire is proof that these things have not been all fulfilled.
What if you take it literally, figuratively, however you want to take it? Jesus got to come and shut down everything we ever known in this world and create a new earth.
Exactly.
But people don't want to take it that way. I mean, you can take it literally, figuratively, metaphorically, however you want to take it. You got to take it though.
Okay, so Daniel 2:44, it says, in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So back to the whole image of the rock breaking these kingdoms, and that the kingdom of the Most High God is going to consume those kingdoms and stand forever. We're not at that point yet. We're still dealing with wars and rumors of wars. Meaning
it's unfulfilled. So saying anything in the Bible is fully fulfilled is foolishness.
Now, I want to get a little intricate here, because I'm going to Daniel 7, and again, I'm bouncing around. Everybody have your pens out. You got to do the research for yourself. I would advise people that listen to us speak about this, say a prayer, ask God's spirit, and then go get to your own research. But I'm giving you enough things that you could put together and try to, and giving you a head start. In Daniel 7, the four Gentile empires are also revealed by God in vision. Only this time they are represented by four beasts. The fourth beast, representing the Roman Empire, has 10 horns on its head. That's verse 7 and 8 of Daniel 7. And I'm going to read them. After this, I saw the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns, right? So considering those 10 horns, we would have to be able to look at Rome and see 10 kingdoms that rose up, and with the focal point being on the 7 remaining. And I'm going to walk through secular history to show you guys when all of this happened. I'm going to try to do it as quick as possible.
Well, I can't remember the term, but it's called the European Common Market. You spoke on it, didn't you? I don't know what term you used to speak on it, but
yeah, the European Union or the European coal and steel or the European Common
Union.
Market.
That's when they came together, and it's more than 10. But when they dwindle down to 10, all hell gonna break loose. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, that left 7 horns, 7 resurrections of an empire. Now, see, the thing that how I'm breaking it down is you're right. It's more than literally 7 kings per se, but it's 7 raising up and then going into the abyss or going underground. And it's really symbolized by dynasties. So when you look at the different resurrections of this Roman Empire, it will raise up in the earth. It might have had, let's say, 800 years of different kings. They ran by dynasties. As an example, the Habsburg dynasty, where they had a bunch of Roman emperors under that portion of history, but they will represent one of the mountain peaks that is spoken about in Revelation 17, right? And I'm going to walk you through the history to show that Hitler was the 6th head. And the one that we're waiting on now, that we're speaking about in eschatology, that's forming out of the common market of Europe, is going to be the 7th time that Rome peaked and is going to go out and kill all the saints of God. Because when you understand Revelations and what John saw when he looked under the altar and he saw all of the heads of the slain saints, it shows that to locate who this beast is, it's going to have a lot of blood on his hands. And if you look at history, you can't tell me any other institution or religious institution that has more bloodshed on its hands than the Roman Empire. All the way up to World War I and II. That empire, from the very first Christians that they murdered, all the way throughout history, has been killing God's people the whole time. All the way up to World War II, when Hitler snatched the crown of Charlemagne out of Austria. So there's also a crown. They crown these emperors under Rome. So what I'm saying is it's a church-state combined. The difference between ancient Rome and what took place in AD, I think it's 554 under Justinian. When Justinian came in, he took out 3 barbarian tribes that took over Rome after the fall of Rome. So when Rome fell, then barbarians came and took it over. It became the Holy Roman Empire under Justinian in 554 AD, when he basically combined with the Catholic Church and wore a crown. The second time that the Roman Empire rose up again, because remember, it's represented by mountains, meaning that there can be more than one king, but each era of this church, just like God's 7 eras of his church, they will raise up, then they will go down underground, and just like and the reason why I'm saying that is I showed you guys earlier the rat lines and Operation Paperclip to show you that the Germans and the Catholic Church worked together to put those Nazis underground. And the whole world right now is asleep because they don't even see most of what me and Brother Carl is talking about here, about the future of Germany and how it's going to bring us to World War III. And the Bible says it's going to bring us under the great tribulation, a time that man has never seen, and that that country is going to wade through seas of blood all the way to Armageddon and the return of Jesus Christ to this earth. But I'm going to give you the 6 heads. The first one was Justinian. The second one they all love. Everybody heard this before. Charles the Great, Charlemagne. And we know in the hip hop community, we got a brother named Charlemagne the God. So Charlemagne was the second time after Justinian and all the kings that came up under him as emperors of Rome. When they went underground, then they rose back up again under Charles the Great. The third time was under Otto the Great in 1273. The fourth time was the Habsburg dynasty. That was probably the longest succession of kings that were kings under the Roman Empire before they went underground to the fifth resurrection. But I'm walking again. The first was Justinian. Go do your history on who Justinian was and how he set up what is known as the Holy Roman Empire, not to be confused with ancient Rome. This is post the first three kings because the Bible tells us there's 10 horns. The first three I told you were the barbarian tribes that took over Rome, or took over the Holy Roman Empire, but they wasn't holy yet. They became holy when Justinian was crowned. Then they went wading through seas of blood, killing more God's people. Then they went underground, and then they rose up again under Charlemagne. Then they waded through more seas of blood. They went underground, and then they rose up through Otto the Great. Then they waded through more blood, and they went underground, and they rose up again under the Habsburg dynasty. And in the Habsburg dynasty, this is when Spain comes into play with Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, and how Germany and the Roman Empire tied themselves into the Spain. Then you got the genealogy of the Habsburg dynasty divided Germany and Spain along those lines, right? Then you have the next one, the fifth resurrection was Napoleon. Napoleon was where it was different because this time wasn't a German emperor, it was an actual Frenchman. So let me read this to you. When Napoleon finally crushed what remained of the Habsburg Empire, remember I told you the Habsburg dynasty was the fourth resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire, and they had more than one king. It really spans over like 800 years. But now you have Napoleon. He steps in, and then it appeared that the last vestige of the Holy Roman Empire was destroyed under Napoleon. So a lot of scholars say that Napoleon did away with the Holy Roman Empire, but we're going to show in history how it rose up. But what historians do not realize is that when Napoleon grabbed the emperor's crown from the Pope's hands, he crowned himself the Holy Roman Empire. That's the fifth time.
Well,
the sixth time was Hitler.
Quick question: How much longer do you want to go?
I'm about to wrap it up here, but the sixth time was Hitler. And then what we waiting on is the seventh resurrection, i.e. the modern German common market is going to make an alliance with the current Catholic Church, and then they're going to go to war.
Which, while once again, the Holy Roman Empire, you have a secular and a spiritual leader. You had a pope, and that's why you had a beast and the false prophet. One is the beast because he can go to war, and the false prophet is the one that falsely tell you stuff, i.e. the Pope.
Exactly. So I'm showing you what I walked you through from Justinian all the way to Hitler, how you have that beast and that false prophet or that church that crowns these individuals the emperor of Rome. And Hitler was the emperor of Rome because he went and snatched the crown in Austria when he annexed that country. He took that crown and put him on his head. And I showed how post-World War II, the rat lines and Operation Paperclip was set up to sneak those Germans out of Germany and give them political asylum, i.e. taking them underground so that they can rise up again one last time. Because the Bible says after the 7 heads, it's 10 total, but after the 7, then Jesus Christ will return to this planet, and then he's going to destroy all the kingdoms of this earth and bring them under one house. So yeah, there's more to this. like I said, I think we definitely, we'll do another show because I got a bunch of other notes. But I just wanted to, keep everybody up to speed. So we started this off. I'm gonna close out like this. We started this off with current events as it relates to why Greenland, Panama, and Canada. Why is Trump seizing or looking at these locations for the strategic betterment of the United States of America and growth? Right? Look from a military standpoint. Then I gave you a little bit of eschatology showing how all of this is culminating into World War III and what countries, some of the countries are doing. In the next show, I'll break down a little bit more the north, south, east, and west. The Bible explains how every single nation on this planet is going to move in regards to the coming kingdom of Jesus Christ.
Ain't nobody effing with this. Nobody effing with this. Nobody even gonna try. They'll talk about it, but not with us around.
Well, the God told me to do it daily, and the work has to be done continually. You do it on your platform. I do it in my work, in my private work. I'm always trying to do the work of the Most High. So we trying to keep this daily. And we gonna expand on this topic coming up. But that's it, people. Like I said, I don't want to be overly long-winded with our shows, but I had to cover a lot of ground on this one because people got to understand that this country is living by the second. And if the people don't get this one right, then But we don't worry about that because the sure word of Bible prophecy shows us how to discern all these events and all of what these nations and leaders are doing in the world as it relates to what the Bible says about the return of Jesus Christ. That's it.
All on my right and my left, I'll be watching. Not crying, but watching.
So that's it, bro. Good show. I appreciate you for opening the platform. We got more to come. There's a lot more coming as it relates to that declassification. Go watch that last show because I'm going to say this on the outro too. Trump yesterday just did some pivotal things as it relates to the U.S. military. One thing that he did was he reinstated all of the soldiers that was kicked out of the military for not receiving the coronavirus vaccine. So that involves in weakening our military. He also outlawed all transgenders in the military. He's trying to bring our military back strong because it was being weakened by certain political parties in order to have us attacked by a foreign government. So they wanted to have us hit internally. That's why Trump's rounding up all of the illegals and the terrorists. Then they wanted a foreign country to attack us from outside and overthrow the United States government. And I'll get more into that in the next show on how that is and who's involved with that.
All right, well, I like the information. Good majority of it I agree with. If I disagree, I got to go study to find where I disagree.
All right, that's what up. Yeah, me and Carl talked about maybe doing a debate. I don't want to have a vain debate, but if we find something that we disagree on, you might get a Israel doctrine dollar skills debate, y'all. I'm not promising that, but we trying to work it out. It's gonna be something good though that will edify the people. I don't want to do a vain debate, but definitely. That's it.
All right.
Peace.
Peace. Peace, y'all. We out. No outro, just out. Have a good day. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can be notified when we do what we do. Peace.